What's that noise? Well, whatever it is not coming from in here.
Am I making a noise?
No, you're not. Oh, is it the fan in the NAS? Uh-oh. Yep. One of the fans in the NAS was making a slight noise, and then it stopped.
My NAS is going click, click, but it's not showing up in Audition.
Yeah. No, my NAS is just, I think one of the fans, I can replace those fans. One of those fans is real old.
Just blast it with some air.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I need more air.
We bought an electric air blower. I tried it out. It's great.
Maybe. But it's like, I didn't buy the compressor for an airbrush. Why would I buy that?
Well, I got a cheap
I guess
one.
I do. I do have the really tiny airbrushes. I wonder if that's powerful enough.
I don't know.
A really tiny one.
All right. Anyway, I'm going to kick off the show. It's Thursday, February 20th, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about retirement, our main goal in life. So the end of this Four Nations Face-Off hockey tournament is in a couple hours. I intend to watch it. I expect there will be at least 2 fights. Could trigger a war.
I think there will be less fights because...
Well, there definitely will be less fights. There will.
Well, I mean, the game will be a physical, hard-fought, tight hockey game.
So I predict
there will be... I don't think anyone will fight because nobody wants to spend 5 minutes in the box in this kind of game.
True, but I do think a fight will emerge due to the tensions and personalities involved.
It's possible, but I don't. It's not like the last game. You're not going to see 3 fights just at the start for the show.
Yeah, that. But otherwise, this is going to be some pretty fast hockey. I have enjoyed these games so far, so I actually look forward to watching this game much more so than I look forward to watching any other New York hockey team right now.
Oh yeah, our teams are so bad.
Yep,
terrible.
But there's been some news, and it's actually a pretty big deal. The James Bond franchise is going to change radically, and I don't think many of you know the story behind how James Bond films get made.
Right. Well, originally there was the books, and Ian Fleming, he sold the movie rights to his Danjaq Incorporated LLC, whatever company it was.
Yep.
It's called Danjaq because it was like a combination of the names like Daniel and Jacqueline, something like that. Regardless, that was by the main guy was Albert Broccoli, but there was another guy, I forget his name. Sorry, other guy. But basically, those 2 guys own that production company. If you watch any James Bond movie, it'll say right at the beginning, like Albert R. Broccoli and so-and-so, right? And so those guys own... It's not like one of those deals where like you get, nowadays where you get like a license, to produce one film or a few films. It was like forever. They just own the rights to James Bond movies, period. And so their children inherited those rights. So even today, Barbara Broccoli and this other dude, they own those rights to James Bond movies. And the newest deal that they had made, because they basically over time made deals with different people of who was going to make some movies, right? So all those Daniel Craig movies, I forget what studio it was, whatever, but they're like, all right, here's a deal. We'll make this set of movies. Deal's up. No more movies for you.
Yep.
Let's see what else. Let's make a new deal with someone else, maybe you, who knows, right? And they've intentionally used this ownership to limit the amount of James Bond things that are made in order to, keep it somewhat special and rare a little bit, I think is their thinking, even though they've never said that out loud, right? They've never allowed just shit tons of James Bond shit all over, although they did allow James Bond Jr., the cartoon, which is terrible. And they've also had always some amount of creative control, even though someone else would write and direct and whatever. Mm-hmm. They'd be like, no, you can't be doing that. And, there were certain things that they would say and force by contract, right? It's like, we still own James Bond. You can't do this. You have to do that, etc. So the latest deal they had was with Amazon, and they were disagreeing with Amazon, right? And they were like, no, Amazon, you can't be doing what you want to do. That's no good, right? You got James Bond movies are on Prime, the ones that exist, but you can't, the shit you want to make, no, we're not going to allow that. And so today they announced, okay, fine, we still technically own it in some extent, but we sold to MGM, which Amazon owns, right? We sold it to them. The creative control is now theirs. We're just going to step away and do something else with our lives. Retirement, I guess.
Yep. But this is the problem is obviously Amazon should not own that many things.
Clearly.
But also, I feel like what is special about the James Bond franchise is going to like instantly disappear because of this. Because the one thing, there was a Blue Sky like tweet or whatever that kind of summarized it pretty well. The fact that eccentric millionaires were shepherding this franchise instead of a megacorp is a bigger deal than you all realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the reason that they sold is clearly, we assume Amazon must have just written a big enough number.
Yep.
Right.
Which means Amazon has got to recoup that big enough number.
Indeed. And also, if you look at other franchises that used to be somewhat limited and rare, right? For example, a Lord of the Rings, a Star Wars, or Marvel stuff, right? It was sort of things that came around not so often, and now there's too much Star Wars, right? There's too much of all of this stuff. There used to be less, and it really dilutes the sort of allure, right? Where it's like, it's not like, ooh, a James Bond movie. It's like, all right, now there's just like 3 different James Bond spin-off TV shows with 50 episodes each. And it's like, I ain't watching all that shit.
And it doesn't matter if they're really good or bad, because the distinction here is that allure. The fact that a James Bond movie, like there are so few of them, considering how long James Bond has been around, that there are people who are like, I've seen every James Bond movie and will continue to see every James Bond movie. And there's a lot of people in that boat. Like any James Bond movie that comes out, I'll go see it. But I've watched maybe 5% of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I watch does the Spider-Man from 2002 or 3 count? Because I haven't seen any since then, except for animated Spider-Man. Anyway.
Of course, isn't the new one coming where it's just Galactus and he's just a big head and he's going to eat everybody?
I don't know. We'll see about the Fantastic Four that I was hyped for, but now less hype. Anyway, when there's less of a thing and you sort of have creative control, you can ensure a certain level of quality. Not to say all James Bond has been great over the years.
Or at least a certain level of something. Case in point, Lupin. There are good Lupins. There are terrible Lupins. But yet, there is the right amount of Lupins.
Mm-hmm. And so now there's going to be a shit ton of James Bond just fucking all over the place because, all kinds of stuff, more James Bond than you can shake a stick at. And the quality level, I'm not saying it's not going to be bad, but the quality level will vary. If there's like the chances of it all being good are so low when you have that much, right?
Daniel Dockery said it best online. I'm just going to quote this guy directly because it was perfect. A James Bond TV show for a streaming service in 2025 is going to be insufferable. Just 10 episodes of a guy who doesn't call himself either James Bond or 007, yet then in the final episode, he orders a martini, shaken not stirred. We all politely clap, and season 2 inexplicably takes 5 years to come out.
Mm. They'll make they're going to make like some fucking Money Penny show where she's the main character, and they'll make a M show and a Q show.
Yep. They're going to make 008.
They'll make like a number one, an evil guy show, right?
Yep.
They'll get every character perspective.
Now,
what was the origin of Spectre? Let's make that show.
Now, any
right?
one of those in a vacuum, like imagine James Bond continued as it has been, and they released a James Bond movie that is from the perspective of the villain the entire time, and James is coming for him. That would be great. If that is one among 100 James Bond things, I'm not even going to notice it.
Felix, the CIA agent.
James Bond versus Predator. I feel like
origin of James. They're definitely going to do origin of James Bond. How did some random dude become 007?
They're going to be like James Bond, Napoleonic era.
Right. Now, I guess we did do a Geek Nights episode on James Bond, but the one negative thing about James Bond, and I was discussing this earlier today in the official Geek Nights Discord, is that like all action movies, right, the fundamental formula of James Bond, the 3 main ingredients are gun violence, car violence, and sexual violence.
Yep.
So
now they have slowly morphed some of that into car violence, gun violence, and just sex, which is a step up.
That's a step up. But those are not the kind of thing you can't. Those are the 3 ingredients. You can make a movie with those 3 ingredients. It's hard to make a TV show with those being the 3 ingredients.
Yeah, a James Bond villain of the week is not going to be compelling.
Car chases are expensive.
Well, good
car
chases are
bad.
expensive.
Yes, or they're bad. Right? Gunfights that are actually exciting and not just like, cop show level are expensive. Now,
I mean,
they did spend
I
a lot
like
of money.
John Wick, but even I am fatigued by the number of people who just get shot in the head in the course of a John Wick entry.
Right. So how do you make a James Bond with a whole lot of talking?
Yep.
Way more talking than a James Bond already has.
But even worse, the previous James Bond franchise with Daniel Craig that just sort of wrapped itself up had clearly set up a non-white woman to become the next James Bond. And then that got walked back and no one really knew what was going to happen. I am confident Amazon is going to be terrified of having anything other than an extremely white man be James Bond.
We'll see.
Prove me wrong, Amazon. Prove me wrong.
We'll see what they do.
Yeah, I got no faith in this. So in a very Geek Nights news, I bring this up because it's actually pretty specific. So fake medicine is fake. That's obvious. Homeopathy
We've been talking about that as long as Geek Nights has existed.
Yep, James
We
Randi.
probably said a lot of things in the old Geek Nights days that I would say I was super wrong and bad. And if I met that old me, I would have hit my old self.
Yep.
But the old me that said fake medicine was fake was correct. I was right the whole time.
So this is subtly different. This is a step further. There are a bunch of fake medicines that not only do they just do nothing, because we know that, like multivitamins, they just don't do anything. These are so much worse. They are all causing liver damage, and that liver damage is increasing, and it's not necessarily clear why. So
probably
green
because
tea
there's
pills,
not really good quality control on the ingredients in these unregulated supplements, and people take them and take a lot of them.
So that is likely what's going on. This article gets into it in some pretty big depth, but basically, and now the FDA can't do anything about it because the fascists took control and they love fake medicine. But basically, to be
fair, Democrats also love fake medicine.
They do, but Republicans are
Bill
funded
Clinton
by
is
it.
the one who signed the law that allowed the fake medicine. In the
That
first
is
place.
true. That was a big mistake. But drug-induced acute liver failure tied to herbal and dietary supplements has increased 8-fold since 1995, which is right around when that bullshit went down and fake medicine became more legal. And it seems to be accelerating. And the DSHEA
Act passed in '94. So
yep. So it took
that law basically destroyed many livers.
Yep. So it took a year from that act passing to liver failure happening in the U.S.
Yep, that law turned people's livers into money and gave that money to people who sell fake medicine, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry now.
Yep. So very likely what's happening here is, one, medicine in the United States has become a political issue. Broadly, Republicans believe in things like vaccines and real medicine, or hate vaccines and real medicine, and Democrats broadly believe in vaccines and real medicine.
But also fake medicine.
Yeah. Though I've seen some papers talking about how left-wing people are slowly abandoning this fake health stuff, and it's becoming more concentrated among the right wing.
Maybe
we'll see if this trend
maybe that was the
continues.
plan all along, is that the fake medicine messes with your brain and makes you conservative.
Yeah.
And that's why we're in the predicament we're in.
Or maybe the life expectancy of people who don't believe in medicine is lower than the life expectancy of people who do.
But that would mean that Republicans died and we would win.
Well, I mean, in the end, probably. I mean, they're not getting vaccinated for things, and measles is everywhere now in the U.S.
Well, one can only hope. The COVID didn't kill enough of them.
Yep. But the other thing that's going on is these fake medicine. The thing about fake medicine is because it doesn't do anything, it doesn't even need to be real. It could just be powder. And a lot of this powder is just made in places with no regulations. So very likely any supplement
I don't know
you
why
buy,
they go through the effort of making it like a
right?
weird powder.
Why kill a
it's like-
tiger and grind up its penis when you could just have chalk and say it's tiger penis? They're the same thing.
or just sugar, and it would taste great and people would love it.
Yeah.
I mean, sugar's not that cheap, but you could still
Yep.
flour. You could use flour plus NutraSweet plus food coloring. Something cheaper and tastier.
Yep. So not only should you not use fake medicine, but I cannot stress enough, unless a doctor told you to take a specific vitamin or supplement, then you should not be taking any of them, because those things can at best help you deal with a deficiency in something specific.
Yep.
Pretty much any human in America who eats food does not have a deficiency in anything that is going to be cured by a pill.
Yep. So even if there's something that is legitimate, not fake medicine, like say
real vitamin C, those cough drops that say 100% your vitamin C, that shit is not good for you.
No, but I mean, it is real. It's not a fake medicine.
Yeah, they're not lying. It is vitamin C.
Right. If you have a scurvy or a vitamin C deficiency, a doctor will tell you to take that, and then you do. Right? My doctor told me, hey, take this amount of vitamin D this often.
My doctor did too. However, they caveated by saying, we don't know if vitamin D supplements even help with this, but it won't hurt.
That's what I thought as well. But then, of course, I'm at the doctor. They check my blood. They count the vitamin D in the blood, and we see that it was below where it needs to be. And then for 1 year, I took the vitamin D as directed by the doctor in the specific amount prescribed. And then I took the test again the next year, and it was now it was still in the low end because it's not absorbing that much. But it was in the zone of now good enough. So
mine also improved. And while I was taking the vitamin D pills, the other thing I was doing is the other advice my doctor gave me was
go out in the fucking sun.
Wear sunscreen less often and eat more cheese, which I embrace both of those.
Well, I eat more cheese, but I don't wear sunscreen less often. I wear sunscreen to avoid the skin cancer and go out in the sun more often with the sunscreen. Anyway.
All right, I think that's enough news. So let's get into things of the day. So I am sure you are familiar with a song called Tom's Diner. And if you don't know the name of that song, then you'll hear it and you'll immediately know, oh, it's that song. It's a woman kind of humming. Da, 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 da.
Oh, of course I know that song. I just had no idea it was called Tom's Diner.
Yep. Famous song, but it's
extremely famous song.
It's famous for a reason I did not know, or if I did know, I forgot, and I learned it just now. That song was the song used in the development of the first MP3s, like the research to develop MP3 as a format. They used
But it's a much older song than MP3s.
Yes, but they used a recording of this song. They used specifically the original a cappella version of this song as the test song for the first MP3s. For a bunch of reasons. Sort of
like that one photo that they used to like test all the camera film and
exactly, or how
but now that photo is very problematic because of its history.
Or like how all the like cinemaphile people would always use The Fifth Element as their like test movie to try out their setup back in the day. So this song is actually caused the singer of the song, Suzanne Vega, also a super famous person who, God, honestly, her music's great. She is, quote, the mother of the MP3. Like, there was a whole big deal about this when the MP3s were developed. So I did not know that. But anyway, my thing of the day is not that. I just learned that along the way. Is, for whatever reason, a cover of Tom's Diner came out like 6-ish months ago by a guy named Henning May. I've never heard of this guy before. And my entire social media sphere started talking about this cover for some reason. So I listened to it, and it's real good. And my thing of the day is a video just comparing these two versions in 30 seconds. I really like covers of songs. Like, whenever I find a good cover.
Shouldn't your thing of the day be just the whole cover?
I mean, it could be. I could link to that. I can only link to one thing in the thing of the day. In the forum, I'm going to link to all these things.
I'm pretty sure you can put more than one.
I don't know if I can. Maybe I'll test that.
All right. If you can, I'll work on that.
Yeah. Anyway, what do you got?
What do I have? So, on the old 90s websites, there was always that thing where you put the little rectangles, right? Like Netscape, or I used CSS 3 point whatever, or
CSS. Mine was like, I use XHTML.
Don't use IE, right? All these kinds of little rectangles. And I don't know what those rectangles... Is there a name for those? Because I would really love to find a name for those.
I don't even know that I referred to them by any name in particular. I just put them on my websites and never thought there was never a word for that in my brain. They were just
Every good website had
the
them.
thing you put between 1 and 5 of them at the bottom of any website you make.
Even the very first website I made had a little Netscape one. Anyway, those aren't easy to find these days, and you don't see them used a lot these days, but that's actually the part of old 90s websites that I like the most. I love those things. And so even though I don't know what to call them, I was able to find a bunch of them on this person who made a little archive. It's obviously not all of them ever, but it's a great number of them, 5 pages worth of 88 by 31 GIFs, GIFs, whatever, of, from back in the day. These are actually old. A lot of them are hentai related, but they're 88 by 31. So how much porn can you fit into that many pixels?
I hereby say the name for these are 88 by 31s. This is
Maybe.
88 by 31. That's what you call it.
It could be, but I don't know. If anyone knows like what a name for these is, let me know, because it'll make it easier to search for them.
DHTML. I just remembered a thing existed. Goddamn.
If you do search for 88x31, you can find a lot of these. This just happens to be a particularly good collection.
This is good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's just dive into it because we got a hockey game to watch. So we would like to retire. Retirement is a relatively new concept in the world. Most humans have never had the opportunity to stop working and yet continue to live while not being extremely rich.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, just on the fundamental level, right? You're human. You need to live. So even if there's no society, you have to hunt, gather, do whatever. You got to keep doing something to maintain life. Every animal that has ever lived, right, on Earth, even not plants, any organism has to exert some effort, use energy to get energy to continue its existence. If it just sits still and does nothing, it will pass away and no longer be a living organism. And so humans, because we created a society and cooperation to where we can offload the labor of energy acquisition, at least a lot of it, to other people, other organisms, machines, systems, whatever, there creates now the possibility of continuing your existence while spending very little time and effort on continuing your existence and maintaining your life, and instead doing something else that you just fucking feel like doing.
Yep. This did not become a concept that was recognized and practiced by governments or societies broadly until around the 18th century. And I'm reading Wikipedia, so don't think I'm smart or knew anything special about this. But a big part of that was, prior to the 18th century, in the entire world, the average life expectancy was between 26 and 40 years. And the strongest argument is that because of that life expectancy, the odds that you would run into the problems of old age that would prevent you from continuing to work were almost vanishingly unlikely to happen before you died of something else. The idea of living longer than you could work unless you were injured was kind of crazy.
And also, if you did live that long, society was still not that efficient, right? And so if you lived in a society, small, big, medium, whatever, if you weren't contributing in some way to that society with some kind of labor, it's like, why would people just give you shit for free? It's like, why would a farmer just give you corn, right?
Now, maybe you get lucky, a local town would take care of its own old people, or the family takes care of grandpa until he finally passes away or wanders off into the field. But societally, we didn't.
Yeah. You might be a position, someone who lives really long time, like maybe some sort of priest or religious figure, or a wise elder, or an academic, or some sort of position that an old person might occupy in a society, because they're not going to, if they get that old, because they're extremely lucky, they might have that kind of job, but they are still, somehow a part of the society, even if they're not laboring and toiling physically like some other people might. And so that is how they will, get what, they'll get what they need to live because they're still contributing in some way. They're not just sitting on their fucking ass doing nothing, right? If someone did that, they would be in trouble.
Now, there's been a long history of different ways to retire. Like, I don't want to turn the show into like pensions and 401ks and all that kind of stuff because that's really boring. And
we can talk about just the general idea of financing retirement, and maybe not without talking about the current specifics.
Yeah, because that is actually one of our fundamental problems in the world, and it largely is a problem because of mercantilism and capitalism being the dominant way societies are organized. It's really expensive to allow people to retire in the modern world because older people need a lot more health care. Older people live a lot longer than they used to. And because of the extreme extraction of wealth into the billionaire class, there is very little money to go around for non-productive people.
Yeah. And so these people, they get old. They don't want to work anymore. They're probably not able to
I haven't wanted to work anymore since I was 7.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like they've already done a bunch of work, right? And contributed. It's like that's the thinking, is that like I've contributed enough to this society. I'm now old, right? And I'm not as efficient as I used to be.
I put in my time. You fucking owe it to me to make sure I don't die in a field until I pass away naturally.
And at least in the case of places like the United States, it's like while they were working, they were contributing to something like a pension fund or a Social Security right? And it's like, well, I contributed all that. It's not like I did, I wasn't putting in. So now I got to get out. I put in for someone else. Now someone else puts in for me, and that's how we make this thing work.
Now, this is a little bit of my professional knowledge here. So I am not giving investment advice, but I've worked in finance for a long time. The fundamental problem we face now is that people live so long, and the way our systems are structured, there's like all the ways to invest in retirement in our global economic structure are kind of scams, in that all of them require the population of people paying into these systems to be growing forever, and every generation after you has to be bigger than your generation for the system to continue to pay everybody all the way to the end of their lives.
Right. It's like, let's say there's 100 old people. Well, you probably need like 200 young people, right, who are putting aside some money to cover the old people. All right, well, now those 100 old people die, but now those former young people, you have 200 old people. And so now you need 400 young people to cover for the 200.
Yep. And never mind, so now as time goes on, the old people need more and more expert care, more and more medicine. There's a lot more going on. They're living 10 years longer than anyone thought they would. So like the idea of investing for retirement, and again, we are categorically excluding wealthy people from this conversation because that's irrelevant. There aren't that many wealthy people. It's impossible. Like, it's just impossible to do as a society unless your society will grow in working population literally forever, and that is literally impossible to maintain, and someday it'll fall apart. And you might think, oh, but what if instead of making people pay in and having more people pay in later, what if you just invested that money better? To which I say, what the fuck are you going to invest it in that's going to grow at that rate that will never fail and never collapse? Because if you invest retirement money and the investments fall through, you have an even worse problem. Now there's no money.
Yep.
And 401ks are kind of a scam as a result, that were invented partly to, this is my opinion now, my personal opinion as an expert in this field broadly, 401ks were a scam to force people to invest in the stock market to retire instead of pensions, because that caused the entire stock market to effectively go up forever over time, which is also unsustainable.
Yep, we can talk about that. We could do another episode about 401k to talk about that problem.
I have a 401k because you got to play the game.
Of course I have one. I max it out, but I recognize what the issue is. Anyway.
I think 401ks are an evil scam that should be illegal.
Yeah, same. But I'm in on the scam, and while it's there,
I mean, I live in a society like
right, exactly. But yeah, the only way that retirement can actually work is if you, as an individual, right, you do enough work and earn enough returns on your work during whatever you do while you're, in your life, that you basically, have enough extra, that you can then spend some time not working, right? Just like a fucking squirrel that hoards nuts.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't need to work in the winter because it hoarded the nuts in the summer.
One
It's
day,
like,
a really good squirrel's like, I've got enough nuts to last the rest of my life. I'm done.
right. It's like if you want to live to 80 and you want to stop working when you're 60, you have to personally just hoard 20 years worth of resources and don't use them until you're 60.
Which leads to another problem. It is easier to enjoy the world and to enjoy being alive when you are young than when you are old. That is just a fact.
But it's also easier to work and reap rewards when you are young and more able.
But we don't want to live in a
healthier.
society where you work your ass off when you could enjoy life the most, and then when you finally get to enjoy life, you're old and decrepit and you don't live that much longer.
But at the same time, right, if everyone enjoys life when they're young a whole bunch and then waits until they're old to do work, some people will say, haha, I already got my enjoyment, not working now.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Put me in prison?
Can't make me.
What are you going to do?
Right, and also,
are there workhouses?
The people who say, okay, I'm old, time to work, they're not going to be that good at it because they're old and they're just like starting to learn once they're old. Like they haven't even...
Despite everything we said, this was a lot more, despite capitalism, despite even the 80s happening, even a few decades ago, this was a lot more achievable despite all those problems, just because there was a lot more money going around in the middle and lower classes than there is today. Housing prices were lower, so a lot of people could have enough money to have like gotten a house that they live in, and they have enough to make it to the end of their lives. And that cliff, like society fell off a cliff, I'd say about 15 years ago, where I don't think that's really possible for almost anyone anymore.
No.
I don't even think Social Security is going to be around unless drastic things happen in the next, 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good idea when FDR put it in to have the Social Security.
It was a great idea.
But and I fully support Social Security conceptually, but they didn't think about that long-term part of it.
They did. That is the thing that I'm the maddest about. Social Security was designed to function with the life expectancies and salaries of the time, with a moderately growing population, not an extreme growing population. But two, it had a bunch of levers you could pull to tune it. The only reason Social Security is falling apart now, despite the fact that there is an eventual future where no matter what you do, it would fall over, but that could be many, 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 many hundreds of years in the future if we did it right. We exclude most income from Social Security. The cap on how much you have to contribute when you make money, after which you just don't pay Social Security anymore, is really, really, really low, meaning the richest people aren't paying their fair share.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't realize that there was some sort of
I hit the cap already.
Yeah, I thought that it wasn't
I hit the cap a long time ago, actually.
Yeah, it's like I thought that there was every time you get a paycheck, there's some piece of it goes to Social Security tax. That's just how it works.
Why is there a limit?
Yeah, and then one year, at the end of the year, my paycheck was bigger. And I'm like, oh, did I get a raise? And it's like, no, I noticed that paycheck says Social Security 0 because I hit the annual limit of how much you give to Social Security in a year, which, is a lot compared to the median income of people in the United States. I'm very fortunate, but it's still basically pennies compared to a wealthy person. Wealthy people make most of their money. Yeah, and wealthy people make most of their money from capital gains and not from labor income and wages. So they're not paying Social Security really. You don't pay Social Security out of capital gains.
So
it only comes out of wages.
If we just raise that cap only on rich people a little bit with no other changes, assuming Trump's not in presidency, because that's fucking everything up even more. But say we had a real president. That would extend Social Security with no need for any other changes for at least 40 to 50 years. Just by taxing the rich a tiny bit.
That's because in the United States, our whole economy, right? It's even though perpetual growth, infinite growth is unsustainable and still is, there has been enough growth, for a variety of reasons. There is enough economic capacity and production. It's just certain people are we only got a handful of squirrels hoarding it all for themselves.
Yep.
If we just took some nuts from all those squirrels, the United States is one of the countries that has enough for all the old people. There are other countries, right? Where they have way too many the proportion of old people to young people is way out of whack. Like your Koreas and your Japans.
South Korea and Japan, I think, are the two like biggest sufferers of this problem.
Right. There are countries that their economies aren't big. They don't have there is no one who has a bunch of nuts hoarded away. There aren't enough nuts, period, for all the people. And in those countries, people just have to keep working or get their family to support them in their old age or who knows what.
That is also a self-made problem because it's still all framed in a broadly capitalist way in that it's just about money and cost and expenses and investment when there are other ways to handle it. The number of ways you can organize a society that are not that specific way are infinite. The entire global order has chosen basically one way to order society. And that is a big problem. Like, we don't even have to get rid of capitalism. You could just make some tweaks and make everything way better. But all the fuck capitalism stuff aside, the other issue this is totally aside from economics, but it always bothered me. I encounter so many people in my life, and you see people talk about this in the broader social sphere all the time. People who have the ability to retire and don't because they don't know what they would do with themselves if they retired. And that is a concept so alien to me that I can't even grasp it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm working in the coal mine, and it's all I know. And if I didn't have to work in the coal mine, my mind is a blank slate, and I have no aspirations and no hobbies.
Yeah. I mean, and they can't even, I don't know. They don't have a fulfillment.
If I didn't have to work, do you know, I have so many things I could do that I'd still have to structure my time and not be able to do everything.
Yeah. I don't, is that just a luxury of being well educated and having access to culture and being in a city or being a certain kind of person? I don't know what separates.
I don't know. When I was a kid and had
zero
responsibilities.
That's what Geek Nights is about.
But when I was a kid and had zero responsibilities, I still didn't have enough time to play as much Civ 2 as I wanted to.
Yeah, even something like that, right? It doesn't have to be something big and high-brained, like, making fancy artwork or who knows, right? It could just be, I really want to play this video game.
Or I just want to bike until my old man body can't bike anymore. Just I'll bike all the time. Get up every day, go bike somewhere.
There are retired people who do exactly that. You see them out there. You got the old people who are RVing all over, sometimes because they don't have enough money, but sometimes because they like traveling and like RVing all over.
Yeah.
Right? You see, if you go to the opera, and you know what? Most of the people at the opera are old people who probably have a lot of money, saved a lot of nuts so they can pay for the opera tickets. But still, they're spending their old age enjoying culture and whatnot, right? They're out and about. They're not just sitting at home, right, watching TV, doing nothing.
And I don't know what to do about all those people who can't retire, but because they don't know what they would do with themselves. I hope none of you are that kind of person. Your job should be the least important part of your life in the kind of society we live in.
I mean, I'd go so far as to say, if you don't know what you would do if you didn't have to work, right? It's like, what are you working for, right? Yep. You should probably stop working as much as you can, at least, and figure out that this is your opportunity, to go figure out what you want in life to begin with, and then go and see if work is something that's part of the equation. If you're just working for some ambiguous, future that you don't know, and then you get there when you're old, it's like, well, you've only got this one life, and then you wasted it doing work for a reason you don't know, and then you're old. The end. That's not a great way to go with the one life. If you're in that spot, I would honestly suggest, even as dangerous and risky as it is, to, if you need to, stop working until you figure out what you want in life that's not the work, right? And, because you've only got one shot, don't fuck it up. Right?
I mean, I think there's a lot of games specifically in our extended friend group, like Scott and I, our front row crew, where we always earmark them as that's a retirement home game. Like, we have a list of games we literally plan to play with whoever is still alive when we're all 80 in whatever retirement homes might exist.
Yep, starting with King Arthur Pendragon.
King Arthur Pendragon, literally the top of the list.
The first one. We're gonna get to the
I bought all the
retirement
books.
home. We got him. We're getting to the retirement home, and like finally, Pendragon. All right, let's start reading. We'll just start right there.
Yeah.
All right, and it's like, is that like? It's not some highfalutin, thing or whatever. It's just like, yeah, there's just these really time-consuming things that we really think we would enjoy and want to do, but we cannot do them while we are working. But we also can't just stop and do them right now. That's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we all quit our jobs, that won't work either. And it's like that's the minimum plan if we can succeed. And that's, you don't need much more than that. But if you retired today and you just don't know what you would do, that's a problem.
So the other issue with retirement is, the concept of the retirement home, because you can only control so much about your own body. So as you're retiring, at 65 or whatever, there's a bunch of genetic and world lotteries that you might win or lose along the way. And retirement homes vary widely, and a lot of them are really, really sad sack. But I do wonder, I wonder if that will change, again, assuming the fascists don't destroy the world in the short term, if that will change as our generation starts entering retirement homes, us specifically, because I can't imagine going to a retirement home if I'm like 80 with other people who are around 80 years old, and there not being some people in that retirement home who played Quake and want to make a LAN in the retirement home. And we got a lot of free time, and we're going to make a LAN happen, and we're going to be like hanging out in VR chat 4 or whatever.
That's going to be the slowest Quake.
Oh my.
Everyone will have such bad aim in that Quake.
But that'll be great, because if we're all old and
don't
slow...
Don't let your grandkids play Quake when they come over.
Grandkids will be like, that's a baby game, because they have like a neural chip in VR or whatever the kids
I don't
will
know
be
what
doing.
the hell they'll do, but it won't be fair.
They're all in the
cheating.
hive mind. It's Deno Coil.
I don't know. But on the one hand, yes, I do think, right now people in retirement homes, they play their bridge or their backgammon or whatever it is they do. It's like they're still doing, that's just
in my experiences of retirement homes, I found that in just, when I was young, like I'd visit them, various relatives were in them over various times. There's always this subset of them who are like, they got a thing going, and like they were playing euchre every goddamn day, like that is their lives. But it always felt like the majority of them were just sitting there, bored.
Yeah. Well, because I think a lot of them, they just don't. If you're in that home, it's because you're not going in there if you have the ability to live on your own, right? So you're only going in there if you have trouble walking, or you need constant medical attention or something, right? We're not talking about, there's retirement communities, which are completely different, right? You're still living on your own there and taking care of yourself, right? It's the retirement homes. It's like, you cannot take care of yourself. You're so, you're so old, it could Alzheimer's, obviously, but even other things where your mind is still perfectly good. And when you're in that situation, it's like, yeah, you can't really do something unless someone comes to help you. And who's helping you? It's these people where it's just like, they might be nice and good. Maybe they are not nice and good. Who knows? But even if they are, it's like, it's just like their job. And it's like,
well, it's not just their job. They are not paid well or respected by society for that very important work.
No, they don't really necessarily love you or care about you that much either. Right. It's like, you're, depending. It's like, and so you can't even deal with a lot of cases. You can't even move. How would you get to the LAN room? It's like, you need them to take you there, and they take you there on a schedule according to their work schedule. It's not just, you can't just stay in there all day.
Well,
right?
You also deal with the fact that if you make it to like 80, a high percentage of the people you have ever known are dead by that point.
Yep. That's also a thing. But I think, the retirement homes also, it's because you don't have a family that's taking care of you. That's back in the old days. It's like, this is because, it was just assumed. And in a lot of cultures, it's still assumed that, like, yeah, obviously you just take care of the older people in your life, right? Grandma was living in your house when you were young because your parents were taking care of them.
This nuclear family everyone shards off is a brand new stupid idea.
Right. And it's like, okay, so now, you're old, and either you didn't have enough children to take care of you, or they just want to live, understandably, they just want to live their own lives. They don't want to spend their lives taking care of their old parent who has all these medical conditions, right? That just takes away from their young years, right? And so that the alternative is to pay a lot of money to offload that labor to some kind of facility.
Now,
and
what
that's
if
what you get
perhaps
there.
this was a facility of society itself, perhaps organized by the government and funded as a public good?
I mean,
saying.
sometimes it is actually, but those aren't always great either. Look at,
Yeah. Not saying they're necessarily great,
State-
but there's a lot of ways
look
to
at what
approach this
happened with all the
problem.
retirement homes, with Cuomo and the COVID in New York. right?
Yep.
So
Living rent-free in my head is that quiet grandpa, or we'll put you in the home. You already put me in the home. Then we'll put you in the crooked home we saw in 60 Minutes.
that's right.
But an aside that bothers me, this is something I've been mad about for a long time. Retirement communities are weird because retirement communities, like you described, you live independently. They're just like subsidized, and they have amenities for old people to make their lives better, and they generally exclude young people from living in them. They tend to be like not part of districts that pay tax dollars into schools and things, but like sure. But the people who move into them, because demographically people that age are against all good things in the world, these are the people who are pro-car, anti-bike lane, anti-walkable community, and yet they
It depends.
Demographically, let's say. But retirement communities often are extremely walkable. They often have like golf carts instead of cars because like that's actually nicer for the community. They have all these community amenities. I would love to live in one of those retirement communities if it wasn't just full of old people. And I think a lot of people would, because retirement communities often are a lot like the university community we lived in when we were in college.
I mean, there are some retirement communities that are just like one building or a few buildings, right? They're more apartmenty and less housey. Usually the housey ones are like in Florida and stuff, right? In New York, they'll be more apartmenty.
But I think a lot of people would like to live in communities that are like those.
Yeah, it's basically you're getting, like a real neighborhood. You're going to live in one of these things because you're looking for a community of people, friends, neighbors to get together with at the pool, at the shuffleboard court, whatever it is, at the LAN party, right? Whatever things, amenities at the movie nights and whatnot, because you have nothing to do all day, and even if you have interests. Like we do, it's like to organize all your people, right? It's like if you got to live near the people, right? So that you're all together and so that you can see them often, daily, perhaps even, and then you can actually do the activities. And you only really leave, to go do your, if you have business to do or see your family or other friends who don't live there. But ideally, you would find one where all your friends can live there, right? You could even bring your friends with you, or if you don't have a lot of friends, you would make friends when you go there.
I mean, my dream in New York City, like the unachievable dream, imagine if there was an apartment building where all of our friends who live in the city lived in this one big apartment building that had a LAN in it and a pool and some basic amenities.
Keep making a whole bunch of money so you can build a building or buy one, and we can all live in it.
Yeah, I'm low-key working on it. Like I will share I have some retirement plans. I am trying to retire at 50 with enough money to be able to do things like that. And I have the extreme privilege of working in an industry and making the kind of money where that's actually kind of feasible. Also,
a building,
not having kids,
a building costs like 8 digits.
Oh, well, it wouldn't be in New York City is the problem.
Oh, well, that's
it could be near New York City, but it can't be in New York City.
We need an 8 digits to make
Unless
a
maybe I take over that Powhatan Club because they're not doing so great.
Anyway.
But of course, that building's not so great either. So
no.
But my goal is to retire around 50. And again, I'm ignoring the fascist situation, but because that might color.
You got to live that long.
Yeah,
that's the first thing, right? That's people focus so much on the finance of retirement and all these other issues, and we talk about on the whole, at least in very prosperous, fortunate places, people are living longer, right? Some the U.S. isn't even the place where people live the longest, right? And whatnot, but that doesn't mean that you individually will live that long.
Yep.
Right?
I mean, I'm working on it really hard. Like, I made some conscious choices in my life. I love mountain biking. I love skiing. I gave up one of those sports because, as much as Scott laughed, skiing is a very safe sport, and I see a lot of old people, very old people skiing. Mountain biking is a much more dangerous sport, and I've never seen old people mountain biking when I have gone mountain biking.
I see a lot of old people road biking.
I see a lot of old people road biking. Guess what I want to do when I'm old? I see a lot of old people running. My dream is to be that skeletal 80-year-old who's up at 5 a.m. running in the middle of the winter. I see people like that all over New York City. I would love to be that guy. Just a friendly skeleton running at 5 a.m. on like December 4th.
My goal is to be the super old guy who sits in the park and yells at people.
Yeah.
And plays some backgammon maybe or something like that.
Maybe an usher at
yeah, I gotta be an usher at the baseball stadium, right? You go right. It's always an old guy. Nowadays, it used to, when I was young, it was always an old guy. Now, not so much.
Yep.
But I feel like I could still get a seasonal, very part-time-ish job like usher at the stadium. You get to watch a lot of sports and events.
Hey, if Pax is still around, wait till the day where the 70-year-old Rim is standing there like being an enforcer for the weekend.
At the PAX.
At the PAX. Hey, kids. Enjoying your PAX?
I don't know if PAX will survive that long.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how a lot of things will survive that long.
I'm not saying it's unhealthy now, right? It's just slightly less healthy than it was, but it shows no signs of immediate peril. But if you maybe bet, like, is PAX going to last 20 more years? I'd be like, probably not.
Yeah. I mean, nothing lasts that long. Like I have seen so many things like that, or just things on the internet that they just rise and fall. We've lived long enough where we've seen the arrow of time.
Yep. Okay,
so,
I gotta eat food.
Want to get some food?
Yeah.